Thank you. Thank you for coming on kind of a gray day. This is important for us because this is the first live in-person public event that we've had here in this room for 2 years, I think. So this is a good occasion for us. And it's a good occasion, I think, for us to have Ambassador Alyemany here for a variety of reasons. One, we've always delighted to have him. And also because on Saturday, the 26th of March, it will be the 7th anniversary of the Saudi intervention in Yemen, March 26, 2015. So also a date that we should be keeping in mind. And so we're looking forward to a good conversation with Ambassador Alyemany today. Just to give a little bit of background, Ambassador Alyemany was the Yemeni foreign minister, a career diplomat in the Yemeni Foreign Service for 28 years. Served in addition to here in Washington, served also in New York at the United Nations, also in Kuala Lumpur, London, from July 2013 to December 2014. He was the 5th permanent representative of the Republic of Yemen to the UN. He was also at that time elected as the vice president of the 70th General Assembly and vice president of the Group of Least Developed Countries. In 2018, he was appointed as Yemen's foreign minister. So we're delighted to have the ambassador here with us today. If I might, I would ask if you wanted to make a few comments to open up the conversation.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here at this one of these very important centers of the Middle East in Washington, D.C. As we speak of the starting of military operations in Yemen, 26th, I remember that night. I remember I was looking for the president because it was funny because I was the only representative of government functioning at that time. I was a permanent representative of a country that's collapsing, a government that's vanishing, and everyone was calling me because I'm the only government representative that they have access to. So I was trying to find him, and there were no contacts, no connection. I think they were in the move through all the coast of Yemen, going to the border of Oman. So in this voyage, he faced a lot of difficulties. He was encircled in 2 occasions. They launch attacks on the voyage, on the motorcade in two occasions, trying to take him. But he escaped. And he arrived to Oman, to Salalah, and from Salalah, then they moved him to Riyadh. But this is a very important moment in the history, important in the sadness of the moment, because from that day we started to have 8 years of conflict and no hope in the horizon that we have a solution at all, because when you see the way the parties to the conflict are acting, the Houthis are not cooperating at all. Whatever alternative you present to them, they will find a way to just sneak around it and talk. They have this impression that they represent the sovereignty of Yemen. And this fake impression you cannot you cannot change, because they feel that they said they are defending the country from the invasion. They have their own rhetoric. They have their own anecdotic, story, where they said we are defending Yemen from the Saudi invasion. We are keeping the sovereignty of Yemen, but they don't have any legitimacy, not through election, not through public mandate of any sort. So we try to approach them in so many occasions, trying to convince them that they will have a future in Yemen with other parties. They can be part of the spectrum, the political spectrum of the country, but they insist that the only solution for them is to accommodate others. I mean, it's easy for them to take us on board under their control, and this is the only way they see the settlement. Also, as we talk about this 8th anniversary of the starting of operations in Yemen, we also talk about the humanitarian misery of the Yemeni people. It's really aggravating by the time, and making no sense that you can feed 30 million population. It's impossible to feed 30 million. The only solution for the humanitarian side is to get an end to this war. And this is the very important starting point of looking forward to how to live together, how to fix that nation and bring it back to life. I think I will stop here, Excellency. Then we can discuss further.
Thank you, and let me do exactly that, and continue on that same point. And clearly, there has been practically from the very beginning of the outbreak of the conflict. And you were mentioning a little before we came down that people thought that the war would be over very quickly. Nobody expected that 8 years later we would still be in the midst of this conflict. There have been moments in the past where there was some optimism. In 2016, for example, in Kuwait, that perhaps the sides would agree to end the conflict. It hasn't happened. Right now, there have not been negotiations between the parties to the conflict to end it. Really not since Stockholm that the sides have met. And so what's your sense? We have a new special envoy, Hans Grunberg, a Swedish diplomat, who has recently been to the Security Council, has laid out a new strategy for trying to get the parties back to negotiations, has also talked about expanding the number of people participating to bring in civil society, women's groups, other stakeholders in Yemen. So what is your sense of whether any of these new strategies can work? What are the obstacles to getting, particularly the Houthis, to agree to come back and negotiate an end to the conflict?
It's interesting, Ambassador, after 8 years that we're still trying to sit together around the table and try to think the future of Yemen together, the future of governing Yemen together, of living in Yemen together, and thinking on the future of our kids in that country. When I see, for example, the last attempt was in Stockholm, and we managed to do something. But the problem that the parties, everyone involved, suddenly they vanish from the picture. The Americans had an issue with them, with the defense minister, who gave a lot of promises. He said, I will put all my interoperability in the region to help
implement the Stockholm Agreement. Then in few weeks, he was resigning his office, or I don't know what happened between him and the president, and others. And the UN was not interested anymore in implementing that agreement. And at the end, we have now an agreement with the political mission in place, and with a payment of 50 or 52 million annually, and it's not functioning. So this is the only agreement that we managed to sign. We managed to materialize in papers. Then this is the only achievement of the UN in Yemen, because in Kuwait we were close, but we never prepared any signed agreements. And from 2018, the end of 2018, till now we have no political process at all. With the time, the Houthis are getting stiffy in cooperating, and they are really in denial of the entire process. I think they are looking for another process. They are looking for another options, but not the UN, because they feel imprisoned by the UN system, by the UN package. They see the package as, at the end, it will be, they have to surrender to the state. They have to be part of the state. That is very threatening for them. And we discussed that in the past. So what do you give the Houthis to join? What do you give the Houthis to bring them to the table of negotiation? They always have this issue that no, we control Yemen now and we feel safe. We cannot predict something that we are not in control. So it will be quite difficult for them to accept. And for example, now the issue with the special envoy of the Secretary General to Yemen, that we have 4 of them now. The first one was doing great, but the entire equation changed. He was out because he was within the country, he was working with the parties, and he achieved hugely, and you know, you were participant in that process. The second one was achieved the Kuwait process, and he was almost there, but he realized that the Houthis, and he told me after that, when he was he's the foreign minister of Mauritania, he said, Khaled, I did everything for them, but you realize that they are not willing to take the deal, because they feel that the deal is not okay for them. So then came Martin, and Martin did the Stockholm Agreement. Martin did before that a lot of attempts. It took him almost 3 years to achieve that. But the major achievement, I think, for me, that Martin managed to get is the joint declaration. The joint declaration is a very solid document, but at the end it was rejected by the Houthis. It's very solid because it talks about the 2 components of the conflict. From day one, we were talking about the same 2 components, is the security and military, then the political. The Houthis, they cannot accept the security and military, they will accept the political. But we cannot accept the political without the security and military, because it's the state that will never accept giving the control of arms and the use of arms to non-state actors. It's any state on earth that cannot accept that a party like Hezbollah control the faith of the nation. We cannot accept. Not me, any country around the world cannot accept. So I see if it comes to talk about the efforts of Grunberg, there is some efforts that are very interesting, because he wanted to evaluate the process of 7 years. And he has all the right to evaluate his predecessor's work. And he arrived into the three lines that he mentioned in the Security Council during not this briefing, the briefing before, when he said, I think I have an approach that will be based on political, security, and economic. It's the same, but I disagree with him. But there is no such political and security. There should be political and security, and we discussed that in the past, and even in Kuwait we discussed that we can go step by step in both. If we do one step in the economy, in the political, we do another step in security. So we try to intermix the security and the political in Kuwait. I think that was the only experience that it was the best option that we can do. It's intermixing steps. But the economic, we know all that. We call it trust building measures. We call it reconstruction. We agree upon on it. We call it reforming the government, this actual government, and we don't have disagreement. I have issues, and I wrote about it in my piece in the Atlantic Council about the humanitarian. If you remember, I said I'm the former minister of Yemen. My country is starving, or something like that. I was trying to call on the international community to feel this humanitarian moment of my people. And in there, I'm trying to advise on there should be a way of working economic steps and trying to bring the Houthis on board. Not the Houthis, the de facto situation in Sana'a on board. For example, we cannot accept, and you know that Zimam has the same idea, that we cannot accept that there is two central banks. Because this is really making the life of Yemenis miserable. And you see the value of things, the prices, everything is changed. And the money, the exchange, the currency is different from Sana'a, from Aden. Aden is in bad shape, although all the government, the international support, the Saudi support, and now it's more than 120, I think, the exchange rate. And in Sana'a, they use the old currency, and they're still trying to get it stable. I think Grunberg is doing good by consulting, but is not doing good in approaching the crisis, because the crisis is between the Houthis and the government. This is the big sin. The big sin is that these two parties, they need to stop the war. Then the rest can come later on. This is the only difference that I have with Grunberg, and I mentioned that don't waste your time talking with so many people and promising them that they will be on the table of negotiation. They can be collateral contributor to the main idea, but pushing the parties toward the agreement. That no one of those talking in Amman have any leverage over the Houthis. But they have more leverage on the government because they are all, they have influence outside the country with the legitimate government.
So this is, I mean, and this is basically the core question right now. And again, I think that our experience really from 2014, you can go back to the agreement that Jamal negotiated in September 2014, the Peace and National Partnership Agreement, which was between the Houthis and the parties that were forming the government, which failed because the Houthis refused to honor it. 2016 was the government and the Houthis came up short because the Houthis at the very last minute refused to agree. 2018, Stockholm, as you said, there was a signed agreement, but never fully implemented. And certainly friends of ours will argue that the Houthis used the Stockholm Agreement in order to increase their military operations in Jauf and in Marib. And that, you know, what Stockholm accomplished for them was that it took the pressure off of them at Hodeidah. And so we've had this experience, which is now over 7 years, 7.5 years, of trying to negotiate on the two sides, the government and the Houthis. And each time it has fallen short because the Houthis have refused. So I guess the question is, why do you think that it would change? What do you think would make the Houthis change? One of the things that I've suggested is that it won't change, and I think that perhaps you'll agree, it won't change unless the dynamics on the ground change, unless the Houthis no longer see that they're the sovereignty, no longer believe that they are going to be able to rule Yemen, and that they need to find a different strategy if they're going to have a seat at the table at all. But you can't do that unless, one, you defeat them on the ground. Doesn't mean defeating them overall, but at least preventing them from succeeding in Madab, especially. And unless you change the dynamics in the negotiation. I agree with you that bringing in a lot of other voices will make it a much more complicated process. I think that perhaps Grunberg should look at the National Dialogue Conference.
You have that experience in hand.
Yes, he should look at that. And there are both positive and negative things about the National Dialogue Conference. I mean, in some ways, the most inclusive conversation ever among Yemenis about how to fix the problems of Yemen. 1,600 recommendations, never fully considered, evaluated, but a lot of people put more than a year of effort into completing it, and yet all it brought was the beginning of the Civil War. So what can you learn from that experience, and are there things that Grunberg could usefully apply from that would help him in a negotiation now?
I think what Grunberg can do depend on what the parties are willing to do, because he's a facilitator. He's not, he will not invent the peace in Yemen. He would not do anything if the parties are not willing to engage. This is one. Second, I see that it's too complicated in Basel, because if I don't have a solution, otherwise I will be having the miracle approach that all Yemenis will turn me into a holy man. And I do believe that I have nothing of holiness. I'm not Hashemite. I'm not pretending to be one. So this is the idea. I think that also the regional dimension of this conflict is influencing a lot. I think we thought that if you contain Iran, Iran can retaliate. If you cooperate with Iran, how far Iran can, because then they will feel victorious, and they use their militias all over the place according to their policy. And the Saudis, how far can they go down this path of negotiation and accepting what's acceptable for them, what's not acceptable. So it's too complicated. And also Grunberg has no access to the Houthis. And I insist that Grunberg only managed to see in 2 occasions Mohammed Abdul Salam. And Mohammed Abdul Salam is having a public relation office in Amman, in Muscat. So that public relation office is trying to present the best image of the Houthis when it comes to talking and addressing issues related to the conflict. You will see them all the time positive, saying, okay, we can talk about this, we can talk about that. And this is not, he needs to go to Sana'a and be seen by Abdul Malik al-Houthi. And up till now, he had, he failed to get a meeting with the Houthis in Sana'a. It's too complicated because I have the feeling that letting Yemen go, it will continue for 10, 20 years, and we will keep coming every day saying the same, that we don't have the right equation in place. And the right equation in place, I think there should be a lot of international pressure on Yemenis, a lot of international pressure, and some sort of curtailing this movement of arms smuggled into Yemen that perpetuate this conflict. I think if the Houthis stop having enough supply, they are not inventing that supply. They don't have they are not that smart to invent missiles and drones. I don't think that they can produce my little babies drones that they can get from the market, and they have nothing. But they have, backers that they bring everything in. They have Hezbollah officers working in Sana'a in the process of assembling all these technologies, and even the launching. When you see, for example, last week attack on the oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, you see how difficult, because you need someone who is expert in using the satellite and managing to get the staff and attacking that areas. And the same when they did the Baqiq, the old one, the old attack on installations, or also the Abu Dhabi installations. It seems that Iran is totally involved in this process of preparing, even launching, but using Yemen as a launching pad for their attacks. So they avoid, and this is what I wrote in my piece about the drones, they avoid the responsibility, because this drone you can find from anywhere. The machine is from Sweden, the satellite guidance is from Germany, and some components from China. You put the together. There is no way to say that this is Iranian. It looks like the Iranian product, but it's the same. You can give it. You can bring pieces from everywhere, and this is what the panel of experts was telling us. These pieces are coming from here, then they're coming to Yemen, and they put together, and they launch it. They are smart enough to be culprit, but not recognized in international law. And this is the problem of the drones. I think the drones is an issue that we all need to study in the research community, because it has no governance that shows that it can impact humanity and can do a lot of damage without. And Iranians, they are using that in Yemen. And it's really curtailing that movement of arms and ammunition to Yemen will help reduce the duration of the conflict. And with the international pressure, I know that Yemen has a huge coastline, and it's unattended, undefended, and unsecured. So helping the smugglers to use any point easy. Anywhere in Yemen is a point of entry. So I see it very difficult, really. I see it very difficult to stop this war. If you can defeat them in Marib, they're still in Marib. They're still in the neighborhood of the city.
Right.
They are not far. So all these operations and all these huge air attacks and all these, huge expenses, and they are still in the same place. Some variation in areas, but they are still in the same place. And they still have the same thinking of conquering Marib. For them is the end of the war. Is that right? I'll tell you, yeah. They have some reasoning in that. That's why the Saudis, they put all their efforts to stop them from doing that. But all campaigns, as you know, Ambassador, has a limit in time. There is no campaign that can continue for 1 year. So it's like it's the wave. When the forces from the south came and took Shabwa and all this stuff, everyone was thinking that this will be the end of the Houthis, because they are going to advance over Marib and going to... No, they stopped. Then they started the retaliation with the United Arab Emirates. They put more pressure on them. They know now how to negotiate about using force. We need to think how to cut their supplies effectively. And I was discussing with you, we don't have coast guards. We used to have a coast guard, and this ambassador contributed in the establishment of a functional coast guard in Yemen. And they paid a lot, and they brought all the support from all over the world for the Yemeni Coast Guard. And I'm asking now, where is our launches? Where is our boats? I don't know. They are sold in the black market. They are here and there. It's very sad when you see the international community trying to help you, and you don't want to help yourself.
There's been a debate here, of course. At the very end of the Trump administration, they designated the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization. It was very concerning to the United Nations, to humanitarian relief organizations. When the Biden administration came in, they reversed the Trump decision, took the Houthis off the list. That was very unpopular with our friends in the Gulf. The Emiratis in particular have been stressing that they believe that that we should redesignate the Houthis, that we should put them back on the foreign terrorist organization list. Do you think that that would make a difference? Do you think that that would put pressure on the Houthis to change their tactics?
I think it's what the administration is doing is the accumulation of mistakes. So the decision was taken in the last weeks of the Trump administration.
Yes.
It's just an effort to just give something nice to our friends and get the new administration stuck with it. So the new administration came, and there is a listing system in place. They could have used that system because they are not responsible for it, but they can use it as a leverage in their talk with the Houthis. Okay, we will remove that listing, but you need to, in return, you need to be involved or something. And we discussed that with Ambassador Jerry. No, nothing. They decided, they just removed the listing. Without even using that listing, in politics, everything is possible if you know how to use this leverage that you have in hand. So now the issue of bringing them back to the listing is an issue for this administration because the progressives in the administration, they consider that as a huge defeat. What you do, why you respond to their, I mean, it's the equation that they think twice before putting back the Houthis in the listing. As an expert in the UN, and you know that all my life I was working with the UN, I think that the listing is not impacting the humanitarian relief operations, not that much. But the UN using that because they have their personnel spread all over the place, and they know that they will be harassed and they will be attacked, and the Houthis, they will retaliate against them. So they know that the majority of them are Yemenis.
Right.
And they will be, do you know what they did with your personnel in the embassy? They just took them from their houses, and they were there for 7 years. And they just discovered, last year that they can't take them and just to send a signal to the Americans, because they cannot send drones to the United States. Otherwise, they will you will see drones coming around. But this is their mentality. That's why the UN is afraid about these humanitarian relief operations. But the Houthis, even if you enlist them, so what? What's really how that can impact their daily life? They have their closed economy. They have their own leverage inside the country. They are well protected by their backers, and they have all the supply they need. And they will continue this war because this war is very, for me, this war is very inexpensive for the Iranians, and it's too expensive for us. So Iranians, how much they give us? I mean, they say that the budget is around 500 million or something. I mean, the Hezbollah is talking about 1.2 billion that they receive from, and Hassan Nasrallah is talking that publicly. He's proud to be, a puppet of Iran, and he's saying that in the press. The Houthis are very skillful because they keep hiding this fact for quite some time. You remember when we started discussing that, the Americans, they said, no, they are not really puppets of Iran, but they are, step by step, we realize that they are controlled fully by Iran. And they do everything if they have the green light from Iran. But they do it in a way, I think it's smarter than the Hezbollah. Maybe Hezbollah is big enough to hide that fact. Mm-hmm. But it's really too complicated to fix.
So let's turn to maybe something that we can fix. We talked a little bit about the Riyadh conference, about what might be achieved. There's talk of having a second Riyadh conference. That perhaps this will be an opportunity to address some of the internal issues within the government and the movements that are aligned with the government, the Southerners and others. So what's your expectation if there's a Riyadh 2?
Let me just explain to you what happened in Riyadh 1. Riyadh 1 was the first days of the military operations in Yemen. And I think it was just to see who's with me and who's against me. And at that time, there was 3 components. The Houthis and Saleh, they were in one camp. And those that really followed the president to Riyadh and started to organize defenses and organize the army to stop the Houthis taking full control of the country. And there is the third parties that they were in between. I try to explain that those in between were the Saleh GPC outside mm-hmm. of the country, mm-hmm. in United Arab Emirates and in Cairo, basically. Now today we have only 2 parties in this Riyadh 2. We have the big party of the legitimacy, mm-hmm. I call it, which include elements of Saleh, Tariq, Abdullah Saleh, Ahmed, and other GPC. Also, they are part of that huge component in the Riyadh 2. And in Riyadh 2, we have the Houthis. The Houthis are out of interest because they are not interested in going to Riyadh. Now, what might happen in Riyadh 2? It's what you said. It's looking into the legitimacy, a fresh look into mm-hmm. that legitimacy. How can we organize the legitimacy? How the legitimacy can be functional, because it's not functioning now. And the government is not doing anything at all. And this government is only waiting for the Saudis to put more deposits for the government to function. The government resources is under control of the regions, not in the central government. So the government is not doing the right job. The only way for Riyadh 2 is to reorganize the legitimacy. How can we reorganize the legitimacy? Is that changing the government? Is that including the STC and Tariq's forces to the legitimate government? Mm-hmm. Means having Tariq also represented in the government and having other components represented in the government, and not only the old parties, because even the old parties in Riyadh 1, some of them tend to be a Facebook phenomena. Because if you see, for example, the sudden movement represented in the national dialogue. Now, who is really that? It ended up with Yassin. And Yassin has no influence even in his neighborhood in Aden. So you see that some parties in Riyadh 1 vanished. They don't have any presence. They don't have any influence. And other parties remains, for example, the traditional parties, the Nasris and the Ishtiraki, the Socialist Party, and the GPC that is fragmented. But there is new parties during these 8 years of war emerged from the ground. STC, one of them, Tariq, one of them, the Salafis. We don't have the Salafis organized. The Salafis are not organized in Yemen, and they are a volatile and a ticking bomb. Because what will happen if you manage to do something and you turn to see the Salafis going to jihadis, then we have another Daesh in Yemen. So no one was thinking like that. If they manage, if the Saudis and the GPC, the GCC, want to do something, is to organize this anarchy in the legitimacy and unite the front so that they can put more resistance to the Houthis. And waiting for the equation, as you mentioned, there should be a sort of containment of the Houthi phenomena so that the Houthis understand that they have no option to conquer Yemen, and the only way is to look into sitting around the table with others.
Exactly. So do you think, so the Riyadh Agreement was supposed to at least resolve the issue between the government and the STC, the Southern Transition. If there's an agreement that comes out of a Riyadh 2 conference, would you expect that the government would try to go back to Aden and reestablish itself there? I mean,
the logic, what happened in the final declaration in Riyadh 1 was putting all your documents in one, and they call it Riyadh 1.
Right.
They put the outcome document, they put the resolutions and all this stuff. They said, okay, we have Riyadh 1. Riyadh 2 will be having all the documents and discussion in this time in the new document, that Riyadh Agreement should be there. And there should be the accommodation of the forces in the West Coast and other forces. So those should be part of the legitimacy, and they should be represented by the legitimacy or having the platform of discussion as representing the government and go back to Aden. If they don't go back to Aden, if they keep staying in Ma'ashiq, in the mountain there, and isolated from the city, they have a lot of jokes about them. They have the air conditioning, they have the light. Aden is in blackouts, and they have everything in that. And it's not a solution. The solution that you go with your people, you suffer with your people. I mean, you cannot imagine that a person is living with less than $1 a month, and you ask him to sacrifice. No, another push. We will defeat the Houthis. The guy is dying. You cannot ask him to bring more, be more ready to sacrifice. It's illogical. Right. And it also comes the issue of salaries. 8 years, you are not paying salaries to the population. Ask them to resist, and it's nonsense. But this is the reality. If Riyadh to manage to do anything at all in this direction, it will be a positive.
Yeah. We can hope. So on that, and coming back, and we of course had talked a little bit about the humanitarian situation and the suffering of the Yemeni population, which is in both the north and the south. Everybody is suffering. The economy has collapsed. I'm sure that you've seen the report that was put out by our friends at the International Crisis Group. Our friend Peter Salisbury wrote about the economy and arguing that there should be a separate economic track, that rather than looking at economics as being a confidence building measure or something along those lines, that it should be its own track, and that even in the absence of progress on the political and security side, that you might be able to work out some way forward on the economic side. Our friend Mohammed Zamam is working on some of those ideas, and I know that he's here in Washington right now and talking to people about possibilities to do some things. And one of the things that people don't often understand who are concerned about this terrible humanitarian situation, and it is terrible. You have 16 million Yemenis who are not getting sufficient food, and you're not, and 4 million internally displaced. But the thing to understand about it is that it's not because there's not food in Yemen. There is. There's fuel in Yemen. There's medicine in Yemen. All of these things are available. What's not available is the money to pay for it. Because, as you said, people have not received their salaries for years. The Social Welfare Fund, which used to work very well actually in Yemen, is no longer working because there's no funding for it. And so I guess the question is there, in your view, an opportunity to get some of these economic issues, even if there's no political resolution? Is there an economic way forward that the two sides can agree on simple steps that will allow people to live?
I think this is one of these problems with the war economy. The parties to the conflict are using the humanitarian issue and the economic situation in Yemen as a tool in the conflict. And that's why I think it's really viable to think if the international community put more pressure and resources into sort of looking for a linkage, trying to de-link the economic and humanitarian from the political and military side of the conflict. We never tried. We talked about it, but we never tried practice steps. For example, why we have, in my report in the Atlantic Council, I mentioned it not to make it very big and impossible for the parties to agree. I said maybe a technical panel of experts from the two central banks, they can sit anywhere and talk practical steps on that, the exchange rate, basics. If they can agree on something, disagree on other things, but we need to make it work. The Yemenis, they cannot, wait for the international community to feed them on a daily basis. It's impossible for the international community. And you know that the situation now is complicated with Ukraine and with others. If you see, Yemen is not now number one in the humanitarian agenda. There is North Ethiopia, South Sudan, Ukraine, and 4 countries, then Yemen. So and it was reflected in the outcome of the pledging conference, the UN pledging conference. In the pledging conference, I wrote about it and I said, I was very optimistic. I said, we might have 40%. It was less than 30. It was 30.1, which means that and what will happen now, OCHA has much less resources to work in Yemen than any year during the crisis. It's only 1.3 billion. And they ask for 4.3 billion. See the gap. What they can do, another follow-up conference around July. They can also maybe take another billion. So it's still, very short of the international demand. But what I was insisting in my piece, and I was insisting in my weekly articles, that we need to move from the humanitarian relief operations into the humanitarian sustainability. We need to move into the process that helping small fisheries communities to work, helping small farmers to go back to their daily routine will help the country to. I think this sort of solution, the problem with the UN is that the labor division makes it very difficult to work. If you talk about this with OCHA, they said, no, this is not our jurisdiction. It's UNDP jurisdiction. So you go to UNDP, they said, no, the money is given to OCHA. It's not given to us. It's these complications that we never managed to address in the past. We said that we need to have one UN policy towards Yemen in the humanitarian and economic, and it should go into the functional part of it. Of course, the World Food Program always will have the big chunk, but there is a huge amount of money that can go into these sort of sustainability programs that will be helpful. I remember when you were in Sana'a, you were working these ideas that helps much than the money that goes only to rice and oil and wheat, which will, after next month, they will come back and open their hands, waiting for another ration. So this is the idea. I think the humanitarian situation in Yemen, they will go further down the complications, because no one is ready to give Yemen more money if there is no political horizon. That's why the end of this war, and this is what I was talking to Mohammed and my team, the end of this war is the big issue. If we stop the war, and we manage to stop the war, even if we have difficulties in the post-conflict issues, but we will go into the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Let me give people in the audience the opportunity to ask questions if they want. We have about 30 minutes left. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for your talk. Okay. My question is that what do you think should happen for Iran to leave this conflict? Does U.S. can play a role in that area, or how they can leave?
I don't know. It's everything in the region is quite in place. The Iranians, they have the external branches working for Iran. Why they should stop these external branches if no one can stop them? Can we change the equation in Lebanon and stop Hezbollah from what they are doing in Lebanon, destroying a nation, bringing that beautiful country down to the abyss? And this is the situation. And Hezbollah is using the historical pretext of fighting Israel and fighting for the rights of the people in the region. Who entitled them to represent us? Who give them the entitlement to represent them? This is what Iran is using. When Iran, after the revolution in 79, they realized that there is really a huge grievances in the region. They use that grievances in their favor. So now they have them in Lebanon. They have them in Syria. They have them. Now the Syrian government is fighting, struggling to kick them out. But they are a reality. They have their grassroots in Syria. They have their followers. And it's making difficult. I know that the Syrian government is still very strong, relatively strong in relation to Yemen and Lebanon. In Iraq, they are in control, in full control. They challenge the government. They attack the prime minister. Drones attacking the house of the prime minister. The maximum power of the nation is under attack, and no one did anything about him. And they know that it was coming from Iran. And they know everything. But this is the reality. Iran is empowering itself through this sort of tactics. What the international community is willing to do to stop Iran from doing that, I don't know. I don't have a solution. But I'm telling you that Iran is destroying the region, is bringing that nations of culture and beauty to the knees, and I mean destroying everything beautiful in that region. And I can't tell you stories about what's happening here and there. And that's because of the hegemon policies and the expansionist policies of Iran. We don't have anything against the people of Iran. It's only the mullah regime that's trying every time. For example, when Trump tried to use force, they were attacking him. They were ready to, because they know that they are fighting the greatest nation on earth. If whatever they will do, it's a victory for them.
Right.
It's a very difficult equation.
Do you think that if there's an agreement on the JCPOA in Vienna, that the Iranians would be more helpful in Yemen?
They will have more resources, Ambassador. I'm afraid they will have billions, and that billions will go into the political leverage. I mean, imagine if we have a business, both of us, and this business is flourishing. Why I should stop it if it's really functioning? And Iran is thinking about this business as something empowering them, especially if you go one step. The only solution that the Iranian people take the initiative, and the Iranian people tried more than one time with this, I mean, bloody regime. The Iranian people are practical. Business-oriented. They are the bazaar people. I mean, they can fight, but they know that the price will be heavy on them. So it's really the equation that we manage to defeat communism by defeating the head. But if communism by now, with Russia undefeated or the Soviet Union is defeated, we will have problems all over the place.
Yeah.
But we managed to defeat the head. Once you defeat that head, everything was collapsing. How you manage to defeat the mullahs? You need to remove the mullahs so that everything will fall apart. This is my only vision on that. I don't know if you agree, but this is the way you need to address you need to remedy the basic cause of.
I absolutely agree, and I'm very happy you pointed on that. And unfortunately, right now, I mean, the White House wanted to remove IRGC from the sanction list, and I think just because of the pressure of the Iranian community and some of the senators.
Do you know one of these very interesting things that Iran is using? They are using this the enriching process as a leverage. They said, now 80. Tomorrow is 90. Maybe after a week we will have the bomb. And we know experts that tell you that the process is complicated. But they use it as a leverage. They squeeze the Western countries. Okay, we will have it tomorrow. And they said then, imagine even with the Cryptagon, it's a drug produced by Hezbollah in Lebanon. And in everywhere in Lebanon, Hezbollah has the installation to produce this drug. They call it the Cryptagon. So they produce it, mass production. And they send it to the Gulf countries through fruits, everything. They send it, and you take this cargo and you discover it, but the second cargo will go in. So when you ask Hassan Nasrallah, they said, haram. It's forbidden in Islam to deal with drugs. But they do business with it. If it brings money, it's halal. But you don't use it. So this mentality is the prevailing mentality in the Iranian. The same happened with everything. So they use this technology and nuclear as a way of threatening the Western countries.
I want to thank you for 2 points you put you pointed out. One is the separation of the Iranian government and the Iranian people. And the second thing, that the struggle to remove the regime for the Iranian people is really high. We have lost many people in the recent past 4 or 5 years, and it has gotten worse. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. I think, yeah, in the yellow shirt, and then, yeah.
Hi, my name is Ali Mohsen. I'm from Yemen. I intern here with Ryan Zohar, this library. I want to ask you a question about, obviously you just mentioned that the situation in Aden is terrible. And this kind of like put me back 5 years ago when I was in Aden, which is after the Houthis were out of Aden. Every time you'd go to Aden, and if you compare it to going to Sana'a,
It's painful.
it's really painful and it's unsecure. Like you don't know who can control themselves, type of situation. My question for you is, what are some of the tangible examples, or what is the role of the Yemeni government in Aden or in the controlled areas, and how legitimate do the Yemeni people think of this government as compared to the Houthis? Is it legitimate?
Yeah, this is the issue we discussed about Riyadh 2. I think the coalition has a responsibility. It's not only a military responsibility. It's a moral responsibility. It's even a functional responsibility on the ground. It's a responsibility that they should take seriously. And I think Riyadh 2, it's coming in this line. We need to know who's in control in Aden. STC is controlling every step and every issue in life, but not taking responsibility. They said, no, we are not the government. Okay, but you are controlling this area. So no, okay, I'm controlling the area, but I'm not the government. And collecting taxes from people. So why you are collect taxes? No, we are defending you. It's the same mentality of the Houthis. They take taxes. They say they are defending us. Who give you that permission to defend me? I'm asking the government to be present in Yemen and to be a responsible government. I mean, ready to be questioned, ready to answer to the public grievances and questions. This is the problem with the government. I mean, I cannot be a responsible government and I don't have transparency with my people. And one of these things that I was talking when I was a foreign minister, I said, okay, let's do this. The people in the entire world will help us to go to Aden, but we need to be transparent. Bring our partners together with us. That's okay. We have $10. We plan to spend them in this and this and this. So, okay, we will give you another $10. But if I don't know how you spend your $10 and there is no people paying, receiving salaries, and there is shortage in that, there is no electricity. They said, okay, the Saudis are not sending that. Okay, so waiting for the Saudis. But why you are a government if you are waiting for the Saudis to have a deposit in the central bank, and you are waiting for the Saudis to light the city of Aden? So what's the need? What's the purpose of having a government? This is a big issue. And I agree with you, not because I'm out of the government. I was saying that when I was in the government. But this is the reality of things. Maybe Riyadh 2 can fix some of these problems that we are facing.
Okay. Yeah.
Hello, Larry Luxner, news editor of the Washington Diplomat. Against the backdrop of this war in Yemen, talks are continuing in Vienna, as you mentioned, on the Iran nuclear deal. And the Gulf states, particularly the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, are signing agreements left and right with Israel under the Abraham Accords. And just a few days ago, the leaders of Israel, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia publicly met in Sharm el-Sheikh to discuss a regional defense strategy. My question is, even though Israel and Yemen have never had diplomatic or even unofficial contacts, what might be the role of the Israelis, if any, in ending this conflict? Thank you.
This is a very complicated issue. You can ask Ambassador Jerry, maybe he will tell you something about it. But I'm telling you that we're still having a remnant of this Arabism and these ideas of the conflict and all this stuff. And I think the Emiratis and the Saudis and the Emiratis and Bahrainis and others were courageous enough to take that step. and they are under huge attack by every country in the region because of what. I think at the end of the day, if you caught me, they will then consider me a friend again and again, a friend of Netanyahu, because I was taking a photo next to him in the conference in Warsaw. I think at the end we are living in the same area. We need to coexist together, having future together. They need to address this Palestinian issue. It's a serious issue. It's not an issue of you cannot just say that I don't recognize the population of that land because you cannot accommodate them within the state of Israel or the state of, as Gaddafi used to say, Esratin. I don't know what he was using, a very specific concept, but there should be a way of addressing the Palestinian question and living together in that region and think about the future of our kids together.
Can Israel play some kind of a role in even behind the scenes in solving this conflict by applying pressure?
Do you know how many Yemenis we have in Israel? Yemenites in Israel is the second major Arab community in Israel after the Iraqis, and we have them all the time, and we see them in YouTube calling us Yemenis to come and show qat in Naharia. Yeah, really, they keep saying, we are in Naharia showing qat, you can come, and we enjoy. And we have very emotional relations with our Yemenites, Israelis. But this is the fact of life. It's politics. At the end, it's politics that created these animosities and grievances and wars. And we will have to come down to earth and think about very practical steps to live together.
Yeah. But first, fix the war.
Yeah, but I mean, the international community, the united voice. You remember in Basra was saying all the time, we are not doing enough in the Security Council, and end up that I was right, because every time we have divergent views in the Security Council, and now no one will agree with the Russian on anything.
Right.
So Russians will keep blocking everything now because they have an issue with the others.
Okay.
I have one more question for you. I would like to know, what are the points of agreement between the government and the Houthis? Are there any points of agreement? Are there issues that you?
If you ask Ambassador Jerry, also will answer. There used to be quite a number of agreements and issues that they can agree. For example, we agree with them on the outcome of the national dialogue.
That's right.
There is no disagreement in that. But we agree with them also on issues, some issues of implementation of the national dialogue, like the federal structure. They disagree on few things, but they agree with us. The problem that there is a gap between this agreement. And I was remembering, and I'll repeat what I told Jerry in the past. Jamal bin Umar was the special envoy, and he just finished the deal in the national dialogue. And he was very happy and excited about it. And he was coming here to New York to announce these achievements. And the Yemeni people finally agreed on establishing a democratic system, a modern society, federal, I don't know what, and all these, dreams, beautiful dream. And he came, and I saw him in the corridors of the UN. And I was still a deputy head of mission. And I told him, look, in our Bedouin culture, and I'm Bedouin in origin, so in our Bedouin culture, we have this stuff. You remember in Aden, we use it also. Once we have an agreement, we say, Bismillah. Means we go implement. We go implement now. So I told them, now it's 6 months has passed, and you don't implement anything from the national dialogue. He said, no, it's easy, the rest. No, it's not easy. In one day, the Bedouin changed his mind. Because you come the following day, you say, okay, we agreed, you will pay this. No, I don't like this agreement. I want to change this agreement. But, I mean, from scratch, we start again. And you will keep negotiating with him again and again. You know that in our culture. If you don't implement, that will what happened with the national dialogue. Jerry and others, they were very trying to push, and people reluctant to implement. They were thinking, no, we'll do this. Then the Houthis took over. Now, who will convince the Houthis to go back into that agreement? 8 years of war and destruction. And the feeling that they're still representing Yemen, and they're still victorious because no one knocked them down. They're still having the bonanza life in Sana'a. All the rich money, all the big money is in their hand. And they don't think about their neighbors if they are eating or not eating. And the same happened in Aden. Warlords are living what you want to buy in Aden. The most expensive issues in the Gulf, you will find it in Aden. But who will be paying 1 million Yemeni riyal if he has no even 50,000 riyal in his hand? But there is warlords who they control money, they control everything, and they can enjoy life. This is the war economy. Go and read about it. It's taking over the society and turning it upside down. And you cannot recognize your own society. Your own society is totally different for you because you see new oligarchs coming up. They have billions. And the traditional rich people in Yemen are now begging. It's totally upside down.
Did you have a question, Thomas?
Yeah. One of the things that you both spoke about the Houthis and tying it also into Iran is the power of ideologies and the power of narratives and Iran uses this very well, and the Houthis also use it well to sort of spur on their cause and to justify their cause in international settings. When people like the United States come and say, no, this isn't right, they come back, they say, you're lying, right? With Iran, right? They can say they're not actually really supporting the Houthis or the weapons that are using. They aren't really Iranian. They use these justifications and they use these narratives. They use very compelling revolutionary narratives as well to sort of justify their causes and to help empower their allies in the region. While we talk about ways in which we can mitigate, actual physical aid, how can the global international community look to combat these narratives, which in lots of ways are spinning pseudo lies, right, or altering the truth in ways that benefit the Iranians and these rebel groups? How can you combat those compelling narratives and sort of ways of spinning the truth? Because it seems like oftentimes those narratives, which a lot of times aren't really the truth or ways of spinning the truth, have actually a lot of power. And so how do you combat that?
Do you know if you read the foreign affairs during the last 20 years or more, you will realize that this society very rich in ideas, very rich even in fighting their own concepts and challenging their own concepts. We defeated communism, this free world, by launching ideas. Ideas were enough to defeat communism. So now we lack ideas to please the Iranians. We don't have ideas to defeat the mullahs. Why? Because they are hiding behind religion that we don't want to touch upon because it's sensitive on the region and all this stuff. We don't want to attack because it will be seen as attacking Shias again and pleasing Sunnis. It's complicated, I'm telling you, but it's ideas. It takes ideas to defeat communism. It took ideas to defeat communism, and it will take ideas to defeat the mullahs. But if we are all scrutinized synchronized into one system of ideas and beliefs, we can defeat them. Because what happened in the free world, as I was reading in the latest foreign affairs, that we opened our hands to communism, and we embraced the new emerging societies. And Russia used that to corrupt the West. All that money that went from Russia corrupted Europe. Europe is total. They are standing with the United States, but shaky. We see Germans are afraid. They said, okay, what will happen if they attack us? Maybe United Kingdom is only very strong in its stand. But if you go everywhere in Europe, they have big questions about, okay, what next? But I don't believe the Americans, they will not come. And they keep repeating that. It takes strength and ideas. And you are the big producers of ideas in the last century and beyond.
But how do you combat ideas? The Iranians use ideas, like you said, all the time.
They have this narrative, and they keep saying that.
Yeah.
They said we are in the right path of history. Okay, how you convince them that they are not in the history? They are not even in our history. How can you convince the Houthis that they have no right to govern Yemen? They can be part of Yemen, but they don't have the absolute right to say that I am your master. No way that I can think now in the 21st century that I will take a master that will decide on when he will let me eat and when he will let me die, because he is in connection with God. These all sort of things still survive because the ideas of freedom were not enough to defeat that, and it's a remnant of the Middle Ages that keep coming into our face. Every time we progress, it hits you in the face because you need to deal with it.
So, a year from now, do you think that we'll have a different kind of a conversation?
I pray that, inshallah, we will have a different approach at least. But it depends only on the factors on the ground. It depends on our partners, because you can't really calculate what's happening in the Houthi side or the Iran side. You need to strengthen your side so that you can predict something of change.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming and spending this time with us. And you've got a book coming out?
Yeah, really. I was coming here to launch the book. But the problem that, I realized that when I was in Sana'a, publishing a book was very easy. But this time we were very ambitious with our plan. We wanted to have a book of short stories. The name is the Book of Yemeni Diaspora. It will talk about 5 stories of Yemenis in the refugee life, trying to those who died in the border with Poland. Poland and Belarus, and one who died in the Mediterranean, trying to go to Spain, and those who are coming from Ecuador, walking, or through the bushes of Central America, try to reach United States. It's a lot of very sad stories. I try to put them into fiction, and it will be in English and in Arabic, and hopefully I will have it in 2 months ready. Then I will come to.
Then you'll come
Germany
back
again.
Well, we'll be waiting.
Yes,
So-
I will be more than happy to have it the first place to launch that book, and I look forward to your feedback, because we will have also a website where we will put all the feedback. we think that we have a big case here, because now with the Ukrainians suffering, with the Syrian before that, we have a smaller in amount, but similar in sufferness. And that's why we think that your solidarity is very important with the Yemenis. And I see them in the center of the tension here and there in the south. And I feel very sad. And that sometimes even not only the war, our grievances are going after our refugees all over the place. Because you don't know if they are terrorists, if they have a background. One of these stories is about Al-Qaeda follower. And he was working with this family, Namir, in Gaifa.
Oh.
He was with the family. He was doing logistical stuff. He was delivering messages and delivering money and all this stuff. Then after the attack of the US, where they killed the sheikh and they killed the last one of the Dahab family,
right?
If you remember, he was from that group. Okay. So he left to Aden after everything, after the business was closed, no more jihadis, no more. And he was thinking, he said, I never launch a war against anyone. I was doing logistics, and he was part of the system, of course. Then he decided to go outside and to go to Melilla in Morocco to go to Spain. And unfortunately, he was taken by the Guardia Costera, the Spanish Guardia, and he was beaten and was thrown to the sea. So he was dead in that. It's a very sad story, I'm telling you. I try to collect all these stories.
We'll look forward to it. Okay, great.
Thank you, Gerald, for your time.
Well, thank you, and thanks,
thank you for coming. And
thanks to everybody in the audience.